ごめん、あまない。
What's good, everyone? It's Tim, also known as mtgmeurlin, and today we're going to explore a new MH3 commander, Tamiyo, Inquisitive Student, a Simic Turbo Stall deck. Thanks to Modern Horizons 3, we have many more options for what to put into our command zone, but I believe we're also seeing a shift in the meta into a more proactive, turbo-oriented metagame. With the rise of Rogsai and the newly printed Nadu quickly gaining a passionate community behind him, I think it's time we take a look at how we can take advantage of these new threats. Enter Tamiyo Inquisitive Student, a new Simic deck that opens up some unique play patterns and archetypes to build around, combining the proactiveness of Turbo with the table-halting nature of Stax or Stall, allowing us to build a deck that wants to win fast while stalling the table long enough to do so. That being said, this list is currently being improved as I get more reps and more playtime with it, but I want to share the list I'm currently playing and working on with you, and let anyone else who may be interested in this particular commander in the cEDH play space see my thoughts on how I built her so far. But first things first, why Tamiyo? While Tamiyo doesn't have the mana and speed of Kinnan, or the value generation of other Simic legendaries in MH3, Nadu, Tamiyo doesn't draw nearly as much hate as the other Simic options. This allows Tamiyo to fly largely under the radar throughout the game. So what's our game plan? Our goal is to play and flip Tamiyo, tick up her loyalty until she can activate her -7 ability to draw half of our deck rounded up. To do that, we run a number of spells and abilities to flip Tamiyo, ideally on turn 1 or 2, as well as protection spells, counter spells, and bounce spells to protect her until she can ultimate. We also run a small package of Proliferate effects in order to speed up our clock and push wins earlier than expected. But the real question is, what does Turbo Stall mean? For our game plan, we want Tamiyo to get to 7 loyalty as soon as possible, but we're obviously not the fastest deck, so we have to compensate by slowing the others down whenever we can. So we run a very tight package of stacks and hate pieces to stall the game just long enough for us to get to our win condition. But what exactly do we do once we've drawn half our deck? Well, the first thing we were looking to do is to make the mana to cast our spells. So, we'll cast all the fast mana we have in our hand, then look for one of 3 pairs of mana producing combos: ISO Rev, Devoted Druid and Machine God's Effigy, or the new printed 6 and Lotus Petal. These will all make infinite or a large amount of mana in 6 and Petal's case to draw into or tutor for our true win condition, Infect. By casting Prologue to Phyresis and proliferating the poison counters with either Flux Channeler or Radstorm. Since our strategy revolves around getting to 7 loyalty as soon as possible, we want to speed up that clock as much as we can, so we run a handful of Proliferate cards to make our clock faster than our opponents are expecting. Those being, of course, Flux Channeler, Dream Tide Whale, Experimental Augury, Ripples of Potential, Serum Snare, Radstorm, and Forge of Heroes. The upside to these spells is that, save for Flux Channel and Dream Tide Whale, they all have additional utility outside of proliferation, making them very versatile to use for us. Now, in order to get enough loyalty to activate Tamiyo's -7, we have to protect her until we can do so. So we run a suite of spells to keep her alive. Some creatures, as Permeating Mass, Essior Wardwing Familiar, Spellskite, Kitesail Larcenist, as well as some non-creature spells that we want to use, such as Veil of Summer, Cyclonic Rift, Obscuring Haze, Submerge, and Luxior, Giada's Gift. These are different from our counterspell suite, as you can see, and that's a good thing, because that means that we can use these to protect our Tamiyo before we are going for our win, and use our counterspells to prevent our win from being interacted with. Now, we've been talking a lot about the Turbo plan, but what do we need to do to stop our opponents from winning before us? We play a relatively small Stax package that largely doesn't affect us, while hindering our opponent as much as possible. So we play Stasis, Tanglewire, Soulless Jailer, Kitesail Larcenist, Counterbalance and Sensei's Divining Top, as well as the Tabernacle at Pendril Vale. While there aren't many of these effects, they're very potent and can easily stall the game for multiple turns at a time, giving us our window to attempt to win. So we've talked about how the deck plays and how it should be working ideally, but let's take a look at some sample hands to see if we can get a feel for how the deck actually mulligans. Looking at our first hand, this is a very solid opening hand. Has mana for turn 1 Tamiyo and flips turn 2, with the ability to crop rotation into a Tabernacle to slow down the creature decks that we really don't want to see, as well as a counterspell to protect our Tamiyo on our opponent's turn. Overall, very good keep. Alright, our second sample hand is an instant mulligan. We don't have any lands, so let's go ahead and go down to second 7. And we still have no lands, so I guess we're going to go ahead and go down to 6. Okay, this hand is risky. It has the mana for Tamiyo on turn 1, as well as a way to flip her, but that heavily relies on drawing a second land from the first 3 cards, which aren't terrible odds, but still a little risky. If this hand has a way to stop an early win, I'd say it's okay to keep, but at 6 I think we can do better, so let's go down to 5. Here's a keepable 5, with 2 lands, a way to flip, and a good Stax piece for turn 3. We definitely keep this hand bottoming the crop rotation and the obscuring haze. Alright, looking at our third sample hand, this one isn't great. Lots of lands, but not a way to flip Tamiyo, and I think a turn 3 Heuristic Study is a bit too slow, so we'll go to our second 7. Alright, this hand is very good if we're going first. The only thing we prefer to play before Tamiyo is either a turn 1 Mystic Remora or a turn 1 Heuristic Study, but if we're not in first seed, then we want to go ahead and mulligan into a hand that advances our own game plan, so we'll go to 6. Once again, we find a riskier 6 than we'd prefer, so once again, this hand is keepable as the odds are pretty decent if we find our second land in the top 3, but I'd rather find something a little more concrete, so we'll go down to 5. This hand is a little bit land heavy, but out of 5 it's very workable, especially since we can use the top and the Tamiyo's clue that she'll make on attack to flip her instead of using Sea Beyond, making sure that our Force of Will stays active, so we'll keep it. And we're going to bottom Hedge Maze and Burning Catacombs. As I said above, this list is still very new. I'm still making changes and adjustments, and I also know that I'm not the only one working on this commander. Both DJ Avamaya and Listener Elf both have versions of this deck that they're working on, and I've seen and talked with them about the differences between all our lists, and it's thanks to them that I've even gotten this list to where it is now. So I'll be linking those deck lists in the description below, so take a look and see which one appeals to you the most. If you have any questions or comments about this list, please comment either here or on the Moxfield below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.